The rain. It was a constant companion on nights like these, a steady, mournful drumbeat against the grimy windows of my patrol car. It slicked the streets, turning them into black mirrors reflecting the city's ugly truths. Neon signs from dive bars and pawn shops bled their desperate colors onto the wet asphalt. Each drop seemed to wash away a little more of the city's already faded hope. This city, it had a heart, all right, a cold, black and rotten one. And I was one of the few suckers paid to listen to its failing pulse. The kind of night where the shadows grew teeth and claws. A night where the sane folk were tucked away, dreaming of better places. Leaving the streets to me, and to whatever else crawled out from under the city's skin. My name's Jack Rourke, just a beat cop, or so the badge said. Felt more like a goddamn archaeologist some nights, digging through the ruins of people's lives, sifting through the debris of their bad choices. The city was my beat, my burden, my penance. It clung to me like the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey. Every alleyway held a story, usually a grim one. Every darkened window seemed to watch me with unseen eyes. Tonight the air was thick with more than just the usual despair. It felt like a shroud, heavy and suffocating, a silent promise of something wicked stirring in the gloom. The city breathed around me, a slow, diseased exhalation. Its breath stank of desperation and forgotten dreams. I'd seen it all, or so I thought. The petty thefts, the drunken brawls, the hollow-eyed junkies searching for their next escape, the domestic disputes that ended in screams and sirens. But some nights the city offered up something truly special, something that burrowed deep under your skin and stayed there, a darkness that the morning sun couldn't quite burn away. This felt like one of those nights, a night for the truly damned. A night where the normal rules didn't apply. The rhythmic sweep of the wipers did little to clear the oppressive view, just smeared the grime around. A metaphor for my job, maybe. This wasn't just another night on patrol. There was a charge in the air, a low hum of anticipation, like an executioner testing the blade, the kind of feeling that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and made you check the rounds in your service revolver twice. Something was coming. I could taste it in the metallic tang of the rain. The city was holding its breath, waiting, and I was driving right into the heart of whatever storm was brewing, because that's what I did. That was the job. And then there was Ashcroft House, or what was left of it. The name alone was enough to send a shiver down the spine of most folks in this town. Even the hardened ones, even guys like me. It wasn't just a burned-out husk on the edge of my patrol zone. It was a monument to something ugly, a festering wound on the city's memory, a place where nightmares were made real. They said the ground itself was soured by what happened there, that the shadows clung to it even in the brightest daylight, a permanent stain that no amount of rain could ever wash clean. Just the thought of it made my coffee taste even more bitter. The stories about Ashcroft were legendary, and not in a good way. Whispers of a squatter, a phantom who preyed on the lost souls of the city, the kind of monster parents used to scare their kids into behaving, except this monster had been real, flesh and blood, and very, very bad. The house had been his hunting ground, his abattoir. Then 15 years ago, fire. A cleansing inferno, some called it. But it didn't cleanse anything, it just sealed the horrors within. Turned the evidence to ash and the case ice cold. The killer, never caught, vanished like smoke, leaving behind only scorched earth and a legacy of terror. Now it stood as a jagged silhouette against the perpetually bruised sky, a blackened skeleton picked clean by the elements and time. The city had tried to forget Ashcroft, tried to pave over its memory, but some places, they just don't let you forget. They cling to their stories, their pain. Kids still dared each other to go near it, fueled by ghost stories. Most turned back before they even reached the rusted, fallen gates. They said you could still hear things on a quiet night. Screams, weeping, the echoes of unspeakable acts. I usually dismissed it as local folklore, superstitious nonsense usually. Tonight, though, the thought of Ashcroft felt different, more present. It loomed in my mind, a dark shape just beyond the edge of the streetlights. Part of my patrol route skirted the old property line I usually sped past. No reason to linger near a place like that, a place steeped in so much misery, so much unanswered violence, but the air, thick with the storm and something else, something older, it seemed to be pulling me, a faint, almost inaudible whisper, like the house itself was calling out through the rain and the darkness. A cold dread settled in my gut, a premonition. premonition. Ashcroft wasn't done telling its story, not by a long shot. The rain hammered the roof as I drove, my thoughts tangled with Ashcroft. The wipers fought the deluge, then the radio crackled with static. Dispatched to Unit 7, screams reported, possible female in distress. The address, 13 Ravenwood Lane, the old Ashcroft property. It couldn't be. Repeat that address, dispatch. Screams? From Ashcroft? The report came in as a high-priority distress, Rourke. And Ashcroft? Yeah, that was pretty damn close to the devil's doorstep. Ashcroft. 15 years since that place had been a scar, a black wound on the edge of town. The house had a reputation, dark, unwelcoming. The papers dubbed him the Shadow of Ashcroft. Leaving pieces of people behind, they found things in that house that made veteran officers sick. Ritualistic, brutal, then the fire. Ashcroft burned, and with it any hope of catching the fiend. And now a distress call, screams. From that exact spot, a monument to unsolved savagery and lingering evil. It felt like a carefully laid trap. All right, Miller, I finally said, my voice a low rumble. I'm en route. What else could I say? What else could I do? It was the job. Even if the job meant walking into a nightmare with my eyes wide open. Be careful, Jack, she said. And for once, the professionalism in her voice wavered, replaced by something that sounded a lot like genuine concern, or maybe fear. It didn't make me feel any better, not one damn bit. I flicked on the overheads, not for traffic, there was none, but to cut a path through the oppressive darkness. A futile gesture, maybe. The blue and red lights pulsed, painting the rain-slicked streets in ghostly hues. Each rotation seemed to echo the throbbing in my temples. I swung the cruiser around, the tires hissing on the wet pavement, heading away from the relative sanity of the city center towards the outskirts, towards Ravenwood Lane, towards Ashcroft. The rain seemed to fall harder now, angrier. The wind howled a mournful song. The city lights grew sparse, replaced by deeper, more ancient shadows. Trees lining the road loomed like skeletal sentinels, their branches grasping. This part of town was always dead after midnight. Tonight it felt deader. Like even the nocturnal creatures knew to stay away from where I was going. A place where bad things didn't just happen, they festered. My grip on the wheel was white-knuckled tight, my jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to call for backup, to tell Miller I thought it was a hoax. Some kids playing a sick prank. But the memory of her voice, screamed, sounded terrified, stuck with me. What if it wasn't a prank? What if someone was genuinely in that hellhole? I couldn't live with that. Couldn't just ignore it. That was the curse of this badge. You had to look. You had to know. Even when every fiber of your being told you that knowing would be worse. The Ashcroft property line was coming up soon. I could feel it. A cold spot in the night. A void where the temperature just seemed to drop. The call was a hook, all right, and I was on the line being reeled in. Towards what, I didn't know, but it sure as hell wasn't going to be pleasant. The legend of Ashcroft wasn't just a story, it was a warning I was about to ignore because someone had screamed, and I was the poor bastard who had to answer. The car rumbled on, a lone vessel sailing into a sea of black. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the storm. This wasn't just another call, this was Ashcroft. And Ashcroft was waiting. It always had been. The patrol car stopped at the end of Ravenwood Lane, rain hammering the roof. The Ashcroft house loomed ahead, a ruin against the storm. The gates were gone, twisted metal lost in weeds. The driveway was a muddy scar leading to darkness. I stepped out, shotgun left behind for now. The air was thick with rot and old smoke. The house was a black wound, windows empty, walls crumbling. It felt alive. Watching, waiting. My boots crunched on gravel. Every step felt wrong, like trespassing on cursed ground. The entrance yawned open. Doors long gone. My flashlight barely pierced the gloom. The smell of decay and something metallic grew stronger as I crossed the threshold. The temperature dropped. The house swallowed me whole. Inside, the devastation was total. My flashlight revealed blackened beams, debris and shadows that writhed on the walls. Every surface was shrouded in soot. The silence pressed in, suffocating. Each step was a risk. Broken glass, unstable floors, the house groaning under the storm. The fire's violence was everywhere. Some places burned beyond recognition. I felt watched, a trespasser in a place marked by hate and tragedy. Was that a whisper or just the wind? My heart pounded, but nothing moved. The cold deepened, shadows thickened. The house was playing tricks, or something inside was. I gripped my flashlight tighter, the silence now a threat. I moved deeper, flashlight flickering over collapsed walls and rubble. The smell of old smoke mixed with something sharper, fresh, metallic. Then I saw it, a dark, wet stain on the wall. Not old, not water, blood, recent. Impossible, but undeniable. The house had been empty for years, but someone was here, bleeding. The screams from the call weren't echoes, they were real and recent. This was no ghost story, it was an active crime scene. Whoever left that blood might still be here, watching. The blood was fresh, the fear was real. Then a scream, human, female, raw with agony. It echoed from the walls themselves. My heart froze. This wasn't memory, it was happening now. I shouted, "Police!" But only my echo and the storm answered. Someone was hurt, trapped, maybe dying. I had to find her. The house resisted, shadows deepening, the air thick with blood and dread. I pushed forward, searching for any sign, any passage. The walls watched, silent and full of torment. My light caught movement, a pale shape down a ruined corridor. A woman, fleeting, vanished into deeper darkness. I called out, chasing her through dust and debris. She moved with unnatural speed, the house seeming to guide her. I stumbled after, adrenaline driving me through the maze. The house twisted around me, shadows playing tricks. Was she leading me to safety or into a trap? I couldn't stop. Her terror was a beacon. The silence behind her was worse than any scream. The woman vanished through the doorway into a room that pulsed with an unseen dread. I followed, weapon raised, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, but she wasn't there. For a horrifying instant, the room was whole again, lit by flickering gaslight. And in the center, a scene from hell. A hulking man stood over a figure on the floor. He wielded a meat cleaver. The victim, a young woman, her eyes wide with terror. This wasn't a memory, it felt real. Frozen in place, a helpless spectator to a butchery 15 years cold. The Ashcroft fiend. Then as quickly as it came, it began to fade. The opulent room dissolved back into charred ruins, but on the floor, something glinted. A small, tarnished silver locket. Prying it open, I saw a faded miniature portrait, a clue handed to me by a nightmare. The locket felt cold as the horror of what I'd witnessed clung to me. The house wasn't just showing me things, it was making me feel them. The locket was a focus, a piece of the puzzle. Then I heard a woman's cry. A fleeting glimpse of white, the spectral woman darting past a doorway. She was still here, still leading me. The next room was smaller, possibly a child's bedroom. A small figure huddled on a bed, a child. Discarded candy wrappers littered the floor, a cruel lure. On the wall were crude chalk drawings hidden beneath soot. A stick figure of a tall man and a circle with a jagged line through it. I'd seen that symbol before in a cold case file. Another piece clicking into place. This was a signature. The locket felt like a stone, a cold, dead weight. It was a life, condensed, forgotten. This locket was hers. The house hadn't just shown me a murder, it had handed me a piece of the victim. I forced my numb fingers to open the locket again. The miniature portrait inside showed a young woman. The locket was a name without a voice, a story without an ending. Until now. This locket, it wasn't just evidence of a crime, it was a key. The killer was never caught, the evidence burned, but the house remembered. It was more than a clue now. It was a promise to the smiling woman in the portrait. Her story wouldn't remain buried. My mind reeled back to the child's room, the cloying, rotten sweetness, the small, whimpering form on the bed, and those crude chalk drawings on the wall revealed by the vision's phantom firelight. The stick figure of the tall, dark man, the fiend, and beside it that symbol. A circle bisected by a jagged lightning bolt line like a broken sun, the old cold case file. Carved into his forearm, almost branded there, was that same symbol, the broken sun. The Ashcroft fiend hadn't confined his horrors to this house alone. This was about uncovering a string of killings, a hidden reign of terror. The house was showing me the origins of that symbol, its first terrible applications. He was a hunter, careful and methodical. The locket, the symbol, the visions, they were threads woven together in this house of horrors. A tapestry of terror revealing a horrifying pattern. The victims, vulnerable like the transients the fiend targeted. It was calculated cruelty, the fresh blood, the screams. The pattern wasn't just historical, it was current. The fiend, or a copycat was still at work, the spectral woman, a victim, or a guide leading me to the truth. She was the thread connecting these rooms, forcing me to understand. The house, an archive of pain, using me to play back its terrible files. The pieces were falling into place. The Ashcroft fiend was a meticulous artist of agony. He had a type, a ritual, a signature, the locket, the symbol, the visions showed his methods. This house was teaching me how to see. The revelations were crystallizing. The fog of legend was burning away, revealing the truth. The house had waited 15 years. Tonight it had chosen me. The revelations were complete. What did the house want me to do with it now? And how did I get out of this nightmare alive? The revelations settled, a crushing weight, the locket, the crudely drawn symbol, the ghastly faces swirled within my mind, a relentless vortex of horror. This house branded me. I knew the truth about the Ashcroft fiend, but I was still trapped inside this charnel house. The very air tasted of soot, decay, and old blood. I had to get out. Now, away from the whispers, the visions, the presence of so much death. Survival came first. The dead had told their tales. Now the living needed to escape. The path seemed to have twisted. Solid walls loomed. The house was playing with me. It just wanted to keep me. Panic began to claw its way up my throat. Had to stay calm. This house, this entity, was something else entirely, sated on my fear. I gripped the locket. I would not become another ghost. I chose a direction. My heavy police boots crunched loudly on shattered glass and charred wood. Every sound was amplified in the suffocating silence. The silence pulsed with unspoken threats, imminent danger. The house seemed to breathe around me, a deep exhalation of ancient malice. Shadows danced mockingly. I pushed the horrifying images away, focusing on movement. The ruin defied logic, shifting like a fever dream. A doorway led into a burned-out chamber, the smell of sulfur thick in the air. It was a living nightmare, the house altering itself. The wind howled with mocking laughter, or maybe it was the screams of the damned. This place was intelligently working against me, a cruel maze. My flashlight felt like a pathetic pinprick. Then the whispers started, insidious voices from the walls. They knew my name, promising relief if I would just stay. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound was already inside my head. It was a direct psychological assault wanting to break me. Pain shot up my leg, a strangely welcome sensation. I wouldn't listen, I wouldn't break. The truth of the Ashcroft fiend was too important. I pushed myself up, grit hardening my jaw. I was a cop and I wasn't going down without a fight. The exit had to be here. Through the darkness, I saw a glimmer, real light. The storm lessened, or maybe dawn was breaking. I pushed towards it, scrambling over rubble. I burst through the opening into the cold air. Ashcroft House loomed behind me. I stumbled towards my patrol car, a beacon of normalcy. The engine roared to life. The broken sun symbol was burned into my mind. The case was cracked open. The official report was a masterpiece of omission. Vandalism, squatter activity, the locket, the symbol, the connections, that was concrete, enough to reignite the hunt. The hunt could begin anew. I drove away as the sun broke through the clouds. Ashcroft receded but would never leave me, a deep, invisible scar that will never fully heal.